Hi, I'm Casey Bell, and you're watching Writer to Writer Interviews. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Writer to Writer Interviews. My guest for today is Tanya Todd, and Scott Donnelly returns for another episode. Let's take a look.
Okay, so the first question I have is, I see you have had some stories in, looks like a few anthologies.
Yes.
Yes. What has been your favorite story that you've written for in anthology?
My favorite one is Morning Sacrifice. Possibly because I don't feel I completely wrote that. When I sat down I had an idea of what I wanted to do for that. They gave us a theme. It had to be about redemption and it had to take place in Nevada. And that's all I had to go with. And I sat down intending to write one story, and it felt like the narrator took over and started telling me the story and started giving me the details and revealing tidbits about his history, or it's like, man, I had no idea. And so that experience was just so incredible that, anything I wrote isn't as cool as what he told me,
Right. It's awesome when the story just starts flowing after you start something, and it's amazing where some of those things can end up.
Right. I mean, I started writing it in third person because that's my preference. But once I started revising it, I realized it's a lie in third person. This is a first person story. And
Mm-hmm.
it was the first time I ever effectively wrote in first person because I just don't enjoy it. It usually feels too self-absorbent.
Mm-hmm.
But it worked it worked so well with this that I had to fight my own instincts with it. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to let him tell his story and I'll just step aside and let it happen.
Right. No, that's cool. Second question. What has been your favorite character you have written? Maybe it was that one, I don't know. And why?
That is so tough. Oh, my favorite character is Lucian Blake. He is the love interest for the character in my first novel that is not yet published, but it has been picked up by an agent, gratefully. So fingers crossed it'll be available to people in the next, 2 years.
I guess that I kind of have a side question. Is that okay?
Oh, of course.
Are the other anthologies you've written for, are they from publishers, or are they independently?
They're not from publishers. I am doing one that might be for a publisher in the next month or so, but the other ones, they were like, one was for a gallery exhibit and they did a book to go along with it. It was kind of cool that they took authors and took portraits of the authors as a gallery exhibit. And then each of those authors wrote a short story and they put it together in a book so they would have the portrait and the author.
That's cool.
And then the Morning Sacrifice one, that was an anthology of Nevada writers.
Okay.
And so the organization who was putting that together, it's their independent project, but they used to do it yearly. They don't do it anymore.
Okay. Third question. Where does your inspiration come from? I know you mentioned with the one story, the character took over. Outside of that story, where do you draw most of your inspiration from?
I would have to say that not even most, but a few prominent ones have started with a dream. And so I'll wake up with the details of this dream and just have to start writing down parts of the story, parts that I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And then other things that'll just be, I'll hear a word and it will just start spiraling and, whispering to me. I'll see a phrase in a book or a tiny scene in a movie. and it will just, I'll realize I'm not listening to this movie anymore. I'm not paying attention anymore, or I'm not reading the book anymore. Your eyes are here and you realize I haven't understood a single thing since I heard this one phrase. So let me get all of these details down and get back to enjoying the story.
Right.
I'm real fun at movies,
I would be the same way. That'll happen with me at work sometimes. Like I'll have an idea or a line or a scene idea, so I'll kind of write it down, and the rest of the day, I do concentrate at work, but it also feels like my mind is completely on the idea, trying to iron it out also.
Sometimes you'll just have a conversation with someone and they'll tell you something about their life, and it'll trigger, that would be an interesting detail in a story. And then you start building around just this one idea.
Right.
Or a character that comes to mind because of something that you see.
Right. We on the fourth question? I also saw that you are an actress, and it says that did you write, direct, and act in a movie that you created during the quarantine?
I didn't direct it.
You didn't direct it?
No.
Okay. Okay.
I was supposed to star in a feature-length film this year, and we were scheduled to shoot in the spring, but then I was cast as Cleopatra, which is a play, and I was putting together the Las Vegas Writing Conference. And so the director is like, yeah, you have enough on your plate. We will shift shooting to later in the year, to, May. Well, we know what happened this year, and that was not a possibility.
Right.
She was super depressed about it. And so I said, well, you're creative. Why don't you write something that people can film at home? And she said, okay, you're writing it with me. Just like that. And I was like, okay, I'm writing it with her. And so we had Zoom meetings and came up with a concept and wrote it together and got it all cast, and we shot it over the summer, and it's supposed to be in the finishing stages of editing right now. I've seen a little bit of it, but not the whole thing yet. What I saw, I really liked.
Can you say anything about it? Like maybe not.
Well, it's called New Normal, and it was filmed, quarantine summer. So that should give you some idea of
right
of the concept. But it's mostly about dating in the new, lockdown world.
Gotcha.
With a bit of a twist.
Okay. And my final question, what are your current projects or anything that you have coming up that you're excited about?
How much time do we have? So I am finishing up my blog series, which is called 52 Love. We're in the last 3 weeks of the year, and so I have to finish writing those. I'm working on that anthology that I mentioned, where I don't even know if I'm allowed to say it, but it's a really cool concept about comparing literary characters, like classic literature characters, to comic book characters.
Oh.
And looking at the parallels between them. And I am preparing for the next Henderson Writers Group, is where I'm the education chair. I serve as education chair for them. So I'm preparing the faculty for Las Vegas Writers Conference, which will happen in April. I am slated to star and be on the writing team for a new television series that's supposed to film. We're hoping in January, but who knows with lockdown, we're not going to do it until it's safe.
Right.
But that is on the docket. The pilot script is almost finished. And I'm trying to narrow down what else to tell you. I recently signed with a literary agent, so we are working on preparing that blog to become a nonfiction book. She also has my novel Dark Beacon, and we're tweaking that so that it's ready to go on submission. I'm writing a separate book that I started in NaNoWriMo, but in case you can't tell, I'm a little bit busy, so I didn't finish it.
Sounds like it.
I didn't finish it in November, but I would like to finish it this month, if not early, at least the first draft of it.
Right.
And then I was just this last week, I was given an opportunity to potentially turn that 52 Love series into a podcast for the next year.
Oh,
Now, if I
cool.
do that, I'm going to have to move very quickly. I'm still in the gathering information stage, but that would be filming and bringing on a guest once per week to talk about each of the different topics on the blog. So I'm hoping that that works out. And, you know, that's, I'll be making that decision this weekend because I don't have a whole lot of time, and it's holiday season too.
Right. There's not enough on your plate already.
Right. You know, what was I going to be doing? Oh, a lot.
That's good to stay so busy though, especially when you love it so much.
Yeah. I talked to my agent yesterday and I said, you know, something that I learned during this pandemic is I might be a workaholic. You know? Because I didn't sit around doing nothing. I wrote, you know, I transitioned that first novel into a screenplay, and I co-wrote that short film, and we ended up filming Cleopatra, or the play that I was doing. We ended up filming that for people to see since we couldn't bring people in. We ended up not being able to perform it live.
Right.
Like, I have been going nonstop with about 2 days. There were 2 days where I took a break since March 15th.
Wow. That is busy. Very interesting.
I hope I answered that well enough.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you got a lot coming up that it's going to be really different and kind of interesting. The podcast thing sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, fingers crossed that I will, you know, learn what I'm doing quickly enough that it will be a quality product, because I know it's a lot of work for people to do a podcast. It's not like you can just throw it together and have it sound good and look good.
Right.
And I don't have editing skills. You know, I can tweak a video for an audition, for a video audition, I can do that. But I know it's a lot more detailed when you're trying to take out breaks or people saying things like that. That is not my skill set, and if it's going to be too challenging, I might have to invest in a little help.
Right.
Don't you dare go anywhere. We are just getting started.
Tanya Todd is an author, actress, and Sin City cinephile. She has short stories and tales from the Silver State 4, Author's Portraits LV, and Spooky Story Night, Volume 4. Her nonfiction is featured in NPR's Desert Companion. For more information, go to
We are back for more enticing interview. Let's continue.
So I guess my first question is, how has your work been affected by the events of this year?
I have been able to stay. They haven't affected me personally too much because the writing is more of a hobby for me. So when I have time, I'll write. I'm not nearly as busy with it as it sounds like you have been. I have 3 very young kids, so it makes it difficult to find the time to sit down and actually write. The only thing that it affected was I was scheduled to be at an indie book expo in August, which ended up getting canceled. So I'm hoping that'll happen next year still.
Or at least they'll do it online or something, maybe.
Yeah, hopefully they can figure something out.
Now, you say that you don't have a lot of time to write, but you're a very prolific author. How many books have you written, and of those, how many have you published so far?
I have not done an official count on how many I've written.
See, it's that many.
Well, I heard somebody say the other day that they have written over 150 books or so. It was another independent author. I have not written that many. I have written, let's just say there's been a handful that I've been proud of. Some of the early ones that I wrote and published independently, I've since taken those down off the internet. I have feel like I've gotten better over the years, and those early ones definitely don't show what I'm capable of. So I took them down. Maybe one day I'll go back and maybe tweak them or rework them. I don't know. It's been, so I'll have time in the evenings when the kids are in bed, sometimes early in the morning before they wake up. Whenever I get a few minutes is usually when I will write something, add a chapter or a paragraph, even just some notes or editing, and eventually it all comes together. It's been over since 2014 or so. I've been able to put together maybe a good eight or nine books that I've been very proud of.
What's your favorite?
My favorite ones are the ones that have not gotten as much attention, unfortunately. I wrote a science fiction comedy series, which the final book will be out next summer. It's kind of just really fun, quirky, goofy, does not take itself very serious. A lot of people who have read it have really enjoyed it. The characters are unbelievably goofy. You can't help but laugh. It's called the Scout Brook Saga. It follows the first 4 books follow a high school student through all 4 years of high school, and he stumbles into a secret government organization that his astronomy teacher runs. So he ends up fighting aliens throughout the next 4 years of high school while juggling normal high school activities and situations.
Sounds like it would appeal to fans of Spider-Man, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely in the young adult category. I like to compare it to if Harry Potter and Futurama kind of mixed together. So
Those are good comps.
Yeah, and then I wrote a sequel trilogy, which the third one will be out next summer. Those have been some of my favorites. I just have a lot of fun writing them. Those are a lot of the ones that I'll think of some nutty lines throughout the day and just crack myself up. But not all of them obviously make it, because when I go back and look at the notes, I'm like, well, that wasn't really very funny at all. So it gets scratched out.
Right, it happens. You're like, this is genius, and you look at it like, this is stupid.
Oh yeah, that's at least half the notes I take for those are come out that way.
That's why your first draft is between you and God. Nobody else needs to see it, right?
Right.
So what draws you to science fiction and horror stories and the different genres you've written?
Just those are things that I enjoy. I've always heard that you should, not in all cases, but you should write what you know. That way you're more comfortable with it. So I know horror and sci-fi quite a bit. I spent a lot of time watching 80s and 90s horror movies, and I used to love the Sci-Fi Channel, the Monster of the Week movies they used to put on. Even they were so bad, but they were just they would hook me just because they're entertaining.
Because they're entertaining, right?
Exactly. I want to write entertainment. I wouldn't ever consider any of the books I've written to be. They're not obviously not going to be compared to these like classics or whatever. They're fun entertainment. Hopefully people can just enjoy them while they read them, and maybe recommend them to other people who might just kind of want to sit back and not think very much for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, that's needed, especially this year. People needed just something to numb their brains and let them just smile and be happy for a while.
Right.
Immerse in a good story that doesn't make you sad and miserable about what is happening in the real world, you know?
Right, exactly.
So walk me through your writing process. You have so many books. What do you do when you have a conception? Like, walk me through from conception to first draft to revisions to publication. How do you handle all of that?
I will have some sort of vague idea to start. Usually with whatever idea I have, I'll kind of come up with the ending in my head first, and then kind of work my way back and then work my way to the end, if that makes sense. So I like to come up with some characters. Title, I usually can come up with the title most of the time before I actually start writing the book. So I have a lot of notes where I'll take notes on characters and some of their characteristics, kind of set some locations, some lines, and then I usually, when I first start writing the draft, I'll just start writing and see where it's going, and then I'll find a way to incorporate all the notes I've taken as far as the plot points and whatnot, and then see how I can get to that ending where it all makes sense. And then once I'm done with the first draft of something, I'll usually go back and read it and take out a bunch that, like I said earlier, that doesn't work very well. And then once I've given my okay to my first read, I have my wife and a couple friends, and even my mom sometimes will help me with the editing. So they'll go through and they'll read it, give me their thoughts, and find little things that maybe I misspelled or missed there. So once I get all their notes compiled, I'll go back through again, give them, fix anything. Sometimes I don't agree with their suggestions or corrections. In my head, I'm like, no, this is the way I wanted it to be, so I'll leave it. And then I work on designing the covers. I design all my own covers.
You do. You have great covers.
Thank you. I've those are also something I've gotten better with over the years, because a while back they weren't very good. Just like the content within they weren't not very good. But I've worked really hard on trying to make my covers more appealing.
Well, the ones I saw were great, and it was one of my questions, but I figured, I can ask him that off camera.
Right. So once I get that, I usually struggle the most at the end with coming up with a blurb for the back, because there's so much that I want to let the audience know that they'll get into, but you never want to actually give anything away either.
Right.
So once I get everything all set, I'll kind of come up with a day where in my head where I usually try to line up, like a horror book I wrote over the summer. I had it come out on my birthday. My next release is going to be the first day of spring, so I try to line them up when I can with just something, so it's memorable for me.
Very cool.
Thanks.
And I guess my last question is, well, it's not a question, it's a statement. Tell me about the drive for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. What is it about that particular cause that drives you to support it over others, and what are you doing for them?
I love kids. I have 3 kids, and when I had seen any kind of child who is sick with cancer or anything, it's not fair. It does not seem very fair for them to have to go through anything like that. Since I've had my 3, my oldest is 5, my youngest is 1, and I can't imagine them ever having to go through something like that. So for this for the holiday season, I've never done this before, but I thought it would be nice to try and I put a special edition out of my book from the summer that includes a short story prequel to it, and I thought it would be cool to anything that I make from either the paperback or the downloads of either of those stories, just to put aside and donate to the charity. As of this morning, I'm up to $71.
Nice.
So in the long run, it's not a lot, but
it's more than they would have had if you didn't do this.
That's true. My goal was 50, so I did beat my goal, just because I didn't know. I've never done it before, so I didn't know how it would go over. But I've gone over the goal by $20 so far, so that's awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome. And perhaps people can't give right now, but you've at least alerted to them, you know what? When I do have the money, this is a cause that I can donate to. And it'll be an indirect wave of what you did, but it's still your influence.
Yeah, I hope so. Kids are very special, and if they get sick, they deserve the best help and care that they can get. So.
Well, thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for asking about it.
An ominous discovery leads to horrifying mystery unfolding over 1,000 miles away. A sinister horror has come to the small Midwestern town of Burroughs, and once it's there, it's already too late. What is happening in Burroughs? How will it end? And what, exactly, is The Who? The Who by Scott Donnelly. Available on Amazon and BN.com.
So pretend you have a fairy godmother, and she tells you to say a name, any name of an author. The author could be dead or alive, and when you say that name, you will magically end up in front of a typewriter, in front of a computer, in front of a paper and pen, and you're going to co-write a book with this author. Who would that author be, and what kind of book would you be writing, and why?
It would be Jane Austen, because she really was revolutionary for her time. If you read the subtext, you can tell that she was very snarky in the points that she was trying to make. And I feel like working with someone like her, especially being what she was of that time, her brilliance is just, you hope it will trickle over to you. I like the types of stories that she writes. I might want to suggest that we don't go for the absolute happily ever after, because that's not real life. But, if she insisted, I would be just so grateful to be working with her that, that I would probably go along with that plan. I would make sure there are a few more brown people in the stories too, though. That would be my one contributing factor is, you know what? The world was not all white back then.
Right. And you, Scott?
Being a fan of horror, I think you're always trying to. The whole point of horror is to trying to scare somebody, and I think I would like to partner with Stephen King. He is the master of writing horror stories. He's written so many different kinds. There's so much involved, and I think he has a brilliant and sick mind, and it'd be incredible to be able to kind of create something using his mind in ideas that I would have.
So first, the really easy one. Who are your favorite authors and why?
My favorite author of all time is Agatha Christie. I had to read one of her books when I was in middle school, and up until that point, usually I think a lot of people might be guilty of this unless they're just really big readers. They assign you a book in school, you're usually not going to like it. When you're forced to read something, you don't usually like it as much as if you choose it on your own. This book, though, it was And Then There Were None. It was called. So it just hooked me, and throughout the whole book they create this impossible mystery to figure out, and then at the end it just kind of blows you away. After I read that, I was like, well, you know what, I need to check out her other books, and I've read a good handful, a good chunk of them, and they've all been fantastic. And that book alone got my interest into like a slasher movies where
That's such a funny leap.
I know. Well, the book has 10 people getting knocked off one by one. So then I'm like, I wonder if there's movies like that. And there were, and there are. So,
there are a ton.
So I got into those, which got me into the other kind of horror. And then it just kind of spiraled from there into a lot of my interest now, and really a lot of what I like to write.
That's really cool. I'm glad I asked that one.
Yeah.
And then the last one, what do you wish you'd known before you started down this path?
I think there's a lot that I wish I would have known. it's okay if a first draft sucks. Because when I think that I think that was my mistake early on, is I wrote something. I'm like, all right, well, I wrote a story. This is what the story is. And then like I act too quick to I put it out there, and
it will almost certainly suck because it's a first draft, right?
It opened itself up to a lot of bad reviews, which I've received several of those since then. Not nearly as many. Most of the ones I get now are very, very good, which makes me happy. But you can't please everybody with everything. You're right. Some people are going to like it, some people won't. But when you put out a completely unfinished version, it's almost always going to come back to bite you.
Yeah, that's an excellent lesson. You know what? Your first draft is just yours. You don't need it. And it's going to suck, and it's okay that it sucks. It's just the rough draft.
Right. I think that would be one of the top ones. Other that's probably the one I'll come up with for this. There are probably a lot of other ones that I'm not thinking about right now.
But it's a good one.
What about you? If we have time, what about you?
Mine is find your tribe. Find the people that respect the art enough to help you, to encourage, to make it better, but are there to support you, because it's a challenging process, and getting those bad reviews and having to make the changes to your darlings, that kind of thing isn't easy. So you need to find the people who understand what you're doing and help you to do it better.
Yes, exactly. This year in particular, I've been able to kind of form some very close relationships with other independent authors, and we've all been able to kind of help each other out, and with help promoting. And one in particular has read almost everything I've done this year, as far as
that's great.
A beta reader for me, and making those connections within the community also helps out, because you can support each other and help each other get where you want to go.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then hold you up when you're not quite there,
Right. And it's good when you get the ones who aren't afraid to give you the bad news too. So
right. I mean, you need that. You need them to be honest, because you're not improving if they're not telling you, hey, you might want to reconsider this, or maybe you could try it like this,
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's important to find the right people to help you.
It was a hard lesson for me, because I would like to do everything by myself, and I'm very isolated. Lockdown started, and it's like, oh, back to normal,
Right.
So it was not a hard transition to make. And in fact, when I went out again, it was, oh, this going out in the world thing, I have to prepare myself for it. I forgot that I used to have to get myself ready to go and be out in the world. And after months of not being around people, it was a little harder than I remembered.
Yeah.
But, being isolated, I learned the strength of having people in your corner, and mentors, and just like-minded artists who understand, what your goal is and the best ways to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is all we have time for today on Writer to Writer Interviews. I want to thank you for watching, and of course, I have to thank my guests, Tanya Todd and Scott Donnelly. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe. Thank you. Have a great day.